Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are diving deep into the just completely paradoxical career of Steve Ballmer. I
Yeah,
mean, you've got one of the most visible, high energy, and financially successful leaders in tech history,
absolutely.
but he also oversaw one of the biggest strategic failures we've ever seen in the industry.
And that tension, that's exactly why we're here. We're calling this the Steve Ballmer leadership paradox.
Mm.
When you hear his name, you probably think of, the viral developers chant.
Oh, for sure. The sweating, the shouting on stage.
Right. That, or maybe the story about him throwing a chair.
Yeah.
But what's so fascinating is that this is the same guy who led Microsoft to triple its sales and double its profits.
And yet,
And yet the stock price fell 40%,
Mhm.
and he completely, totally missed the smartphone revolution.
So our mission here is to really pull out the lessons from that duality. We're looking at a whole range of sources, financial reports from this time at Microsoft, leadership analyses, and then records of his huge second act.
All right, his transformation into this multi-billionaire sports owner and, one of the world's biggest philanthropists with the Ballmer Group, we want to understand how his strategy worked, where it failed, and what that means for leadership today.
Okay, so let's unpack this enormous career. And let's start where Ballmer always started, the bottom line. He was CEO from January 2000 to February 2014.
And if you just look at the raw numbers, the man was an absolute powerhouse.
No question.
I mean, the sources show just colossal growth. Over those 14 years, Microsoft's annual revenue, it just soared. It went from about $25 billion to $70 billion.
And net income did the same thing, right? It was
Yeah.
up something like 215%.
Exactly, hitting $23 billion a year by the time he left.
It's really counterintuitive to me, though, is the pace of that growth. The sources say his total annual profit growth was 16.4%.
Which is staggering.
It's staggering because they point out that figure actually surpassed someone like GE's Jack Welch, whose profit growth was around 11%. That's just wild operational success.
And he wasn't just, milking the existing cash cows. He built two gigantic new revenue streams, basically from scratch. First, there was the Xbox Entertainment and Devices division,
Which got Microsoft a real foothold in consumer hardware.
the huge one. But even more critical was the $20 billion enterprise business.
Okay, so for you listening who might not be deep in the server world, why was that enterprise business, things like Windows Server, SQL, why was that so vital?
Well, because it meant locking the entire world's corporate infrastructure into Microsoft's ecosystem. I mean, these products became the absolute bedrock of major companies everywhere.
Right. Once your company is running on SQL or Exchange Server, the cost to switch is just...
It's enormous. So that guaranteed $20 billion a year in really sticky high-margin revenue for decades to come. He basically made Microsoft financially bulletproof.
Okay, but here's the paradox we set up at the beginning. If he tripled sales and built these massive new profit centers, why on earth did the stock market punish him for it?
Because investors, at the end of the day, they value future potential more than past profit. And Ballmer was brilliant at perfecting the existing model, the Windows and Office monopoly.
But that success made him rigid.
It made him strategically stagnant. And for investors, the stock price tells that story. It was down to over 40% when he announced his retirement. The market was basically shouting, "We don't care how much cash you're making now, you've missed the next wave."
And that wave was mobile. The critique was simple. Microsoft missed smartphones. They missed tablets. Instead of innovating, they were just playing catch-up to Apple and Google forever.
And the tragic irony, which the sources point out, is that Microsoft often got there early. They had early concepts for touchscreens, for smart car tech.
So what happened?
Their own internal structure and strategy just repeatedly killed promising projects if they threatened its cash cows.
So if it threatened Windows or Office, it died.
Exactly. The top priority was protection, not progression.
And that focus on protection fed right into, the infamous culture of the Ballmer era. High pressure, aggressive, what one analysis called talent hoarding fiefdoms.
Right. And you might be wondering, what is a talent hoarding fiefdom?
Yeah, what does that actually mean?
It means the different divisions inside Microsoft, like the Windows team versus the Office team, they were actively competing with each other. They'd hide innovations, they'd hoard their best engineers.
So they weren't trying to beat Google or Apple, they were trying to beat the team down the hall.
Yes, because their performance metrics were based on beating other internal teams. It's just a recipe for disaster when it comes to innovation.
Sounds incredibly toxic.
Well, it was a culture built in his image. Aggressive, hyper-competitive, This is where you get all those colorful anecdotes, the constant shouting that supposedly required him to have vocal cord surgery.
His famous line about Linux being a cancer and communism.
And of course, the story about him throwing a chair across the office and vowing to kill Google when an engineer left to go there. These weren't just, one-off incidents. They were symptoms of a deeply combative culture.
And that combativeness even infected his relationship with Bill Gates. The sources really detail the personal cost here. I mean, they were best friends. Ballmer was his best man.
But their relationship just fractured over these strategic fights. It really became unavoidable when Ballmer pushed Microsoft hard into hardware, the Surface tablet, and then the huge acquisition of Nokia's mobile business.
Which Gates was against.
Completely against. He saw them as these high-risk distractions from software. And Ballmer later admitted that his push into hardware was a key reason their friendship just shattered. It shows that these aren't just business decisions. They have huge personal stakes.
And that strategic inflexibility, it brings us to maybe the most famous miss of all time. His dismissal of the iPhone in 2007.
The famous quote, the iPhone had, and I'm quoting here, no chance of getting any significant market share.
It's so easy to laugh at that now.
It is. But to really understand Ballmer, we have to look at the logic he was using. He was seeing the iPhone through the lens of Microsoft's very, very successful business model.
So from his point of view, why was the iPhone such a terrible idea?
Well, he had two main objections that seemed rational at the time. First, the price. It was $500 to $700 without a contract.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an astronomical price for a phone.
And second, no keyboard.
Right. It didn't have a physical keyboard. So in his words, it was not a very good email machine compared to the Windows mobile devices that were popular in the corporate world.
He was completely focused on utility and price, the Microsoft philosophy, but he missed the whole shift in what users wanted.
Exactly. It's a classic case of focusing on the known, the business user, the rational buyer, instead of embracing what Peter Drucker called the future that has already happened. Meaning Apple was focused on user experience, on design, on multi-touch. They were winning the emotional consumer. Microsoft was built for the office. Apple won the living room.
And Ballmer himself later admitted there was a huge business model innovation that he just completely missed.
Yeah, the carrier subsidy. The phone wasn't really a $700 purchase for most people. It was, $199 up front, and the rest of the cost was just hidden in your monthly bill.
He saw the sticker price, but he missed the business model that turned a luxury item into a subscription.
And that one blind spot, that single miscalculation, it cost Microsoft years and, well, probably the future of mobile.
That failure really set the stage for Satya Nadella to take over in 2014, and the shift was immediate, and it was dramatic.
Oh, it was a total cultural renaissance. That's what analysts called it. Nadella's whole philosophy was about empathy and a growth mindset, a complete 180 from the internal aggression of the Ballmer years.
But the strategy change was the real earthquake.
It really was. Nadella immediately prioritized a cloud-first focus around Azure, and he just reversed Ballmer's deep hostility towards any competitors.
This is where culture and product really meet, right?
Absolutely. I mean, Nadella starts embracing open source. He's working with Linux, the same operating system Ballmer called a cancer. Then he acquires GitHub. It was a clear signal that Microsoft was no longer an empire defending its walls.
They were becoming a service provider, trying to meet users wherever they were.
Exactly. It showed a willingness to dismantle the sacred cows, which is the one lesson the Ballmer era just couldn't learn.
The comparison is just so powerful. One leader's rigidness almost sinks the company, and the next leader's flexibility redefines it. But Ballmer didn't just fade away. He leveraged his enormous fortune. What is it, like $150 billion today?
Something like that, yeah. He remains Microsoft's largest individual shareholder, and he's channeled all that intense energy into this massive second act.
Two main areas, sports and philanthropy.
Yep. Let's start with the LA Clippers. He bought the team in 2014 for $2 billion.
Which was seen as a massive overpay at the time.
A huge overpay, but today the team's valued at over $5.5 billion. And this isn't just some rich guy's hobby.
Not at all. He is all in.
He's applying that same aggressive, results-driven style to winning championships. He spends huge amounts of money on talent, and he's just invested $2 billion of his own money to build the Intuit Dome, their new stadium.
And the players in the league seem to love him for it. I mean, he was voted the best owner in basketball in 2020.
Yeah, that enthusiasm translated really well to the sports world.
And then there's the Ballmer Group, the philanthropic company he and his wife Connie started in 2015. They've given away more than $5.7 billion.
An absolutely staggering amount of money. And the giving isn't just big, it's really systemic and data-driven. Their whole mission is improving economic opportunity for kids, especially in low-income families.
And they focus on regions they know well, Washington State, LA County.
And Southeast Michigan, which is where Ballmer grew up.
And they're not just funding small programs, they are going after entire system failures. Can you give us some examples?
Sure. Take behavioral health. They gave a $425 million gift to the University of Oregon to create the Ballmer Institute for Children's Behavioral Health.
Wow.
It's a massive investment in getting ahead of mental health issues. They're also really focused on justice reform, recognizing how the system just creates these lifelong barriers for people.
So what are they targeting there?
Well, they're giving huge grants to organizations like the Center for Employment Opportunities. That's a $25 million grant to help formerly incarcerated people get back into the workforce.
And they're also funding system fixes, which is interesting.
Very. They gave $12 million to the Clean Slate Initiative, which works to automatically seal arrest and conviction records. It removed these bureaucratic hurdles that stop people from getting jobs years after they've served their time.
And of course, being Ballmer, there's a tech angle.
Yes. Significant funding for the AI Education Project, AEDU, to help scale AI literacy in underserved communities. He sees data and tech as the big levers for opportunity. And, speaking of data, we have to talk about USA Facts.
Right. His nonprofit he launched in 2017. What's the goal there?
It's a purely nonpartisan civic project. The idea is just to give people verifiable official government data revenue spending outcomes so they can make their own decisions about how the government's doing.
Trying to combat spin with cold, hard numbers.
Exactly. He's put a ton of his own money into it.
It's pretty remarkable, to see that competitive drive get converted into a drive for systemic, equitable change, and yet the complexity of his legacy is still there.
It is.
And that intense focus on winning, on maximizing returns, it sometimes shows up in more controversial ways, especially with his finances.
That's the friction point. I mean, you have these highly detailed reports, like from ProPublica, that dig into how he's used his ownership of the Clippers to dramatically reduce his personal tax rate, sometimes down to as low as 12%.
How does that actually work? I mean, the Clippers are a successful team worth billions. How can they reduce his tax bill?
It's a strategy called tax advantage loss harvesting. So when he bought the team for $2 billion, most of that price is allocated to intangible things like goodwill or franchise value.
Not the building or the chairs.
Right. And that value can be depreciated over 15 years for tax purposes. This creates hundreds of millions of dollars in paper losses every year, even if the team is actually making a profit.
So he uses those paper losses to offset his real income, like his massive Microsoft dividends.
Precisely. The sources say this strategy saved him over $500 million in taxes in just 5 years. And look, it's all legal, but it stands in pretty stark contrast to his philanthropy, which is aimed at solving the very problems that tax revenues are supposed to fund. It just highlights the immense power wealthy individuals have to work within the system.
And that competitive heat has also drawn some scrutiny on the sports side.
That's right. There have been allegations around how the Clippers recruited superstar Kawhi Leonard. Reports suggest they use an endorsement deal with a company called Aspiration.
A company Ballmer had invested in.
Right. A company he and a co-owner had invested in to allegedly get around the NBA salary cap. We're talking millions in extra payments and stock for the player.
And we have to be clear, these are allegations right now. The Clippers deny it, but the NBA has hired a law firm to investigate.
Yeah, and the scrutiny is there because the team was already fined back in 2015 for trying to circumvent the cap with another player. It just shows that win-at-all-costs mentality from his Microsoft days can sometimes bubble up again.
So when we put it all together, the aggressive kill Google mindset, the huge financial success, the intense sports ownership, and the systemic data-driven philanthropy, what we're left with is an incredibly complex legacy.
It really is a dual legacy. On one side, you have the leader who was strategically blinded by his own success. He allowed his core strengths, Windows, and Office to become the very thing that made him rigid and unable to see the future.
And on the other hand, you've got this civic powerhouse applying that same intensity and capital to create huge system-level change in health, justice, and education.
It's fascinating. It almost makes you wonder how that initial rigidity at Microsoft, that refusal to change, actually unlocked the innovation for his successor, Nadella, to come in and succeed.
The biggest lessons sometimes do come from the biggest misses.
I think so. It forces you to see that success isn't just about the numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about strategic longevity. And Ballmer's incredible operational talent was ultimately undone by his inability to question the basic assumptions of his own business.
So as you reflect on this deep dive into the Steve Ballmer paradox, here's the final thought we want to leave you with. Given that one leader's rigid adherence to an old business model allowed his successor to redefine the company's future, how do you ensure that your core competencies, the things that brought you your current success, don't become the rigid assumption that blinds you to the next necessary evolution in your industry?